All right. There you go. So, so as you can see for transit, LA is really unique because most of our transit funding comes from measures that us as Angelinos voted for. We voted to fund our transit system, which is really amazing, which means that we don't depend so much on our state funding or on our federal funding. We do get some funding from them. You see here 12% from federal, 18% from California, but most of it just comes from our county through our sales tax, because we voted on R and M, right? So what that does is that us as a transit rider, as an Angelino, we are already paying for our system um, throughout our lives while we shop for things. And we've done other trainings around what exactly what actually covers funding and what doesn't. We won't get too into that, but if you have questions around that, we would be happy to kind of break it down for you. But just quickly, it's not food, but it is things. So for example, maybe like this notebook, um, some part of the sales tax would go to Metro. Just quickly, little breakdown. I will share these slides with you all so you can look at them more, but quick breakdown of how our Metro spends their money. You know, there's administration costs, debt, highway management, planning department, MetroLink, other cities, um, state of good repair, so fixing stuff. But as you can see, and then there's highways, so you can see most of it is transit operations. Policing contracts. So it's not the only thing in there. It's all operations, but it does include the policing contracts. And it's 5-year contracts with different like policing agencies. So Los Angeles Police Department, the Los Angeles Sheriff Department, and Long Beach Police Department. Plus, they have their own security program, and they also contract with other security, RMI security. So it's like a contract they have with this private security company. And the 5-year contract, throughout the years, Metro's policing budget has grown, and this is probably the biggest we've seen. 786 million. It is completely ballooned. It's a 5-year contract, and it is up, coming up. So that's why our work is really timely and important. So just some quick facts. Metro will spend almost $1 billion on policing by 2022. Much of it in overtime funds. And just quickly, because I think that's really important to understand, is that if I am a police officer that works on the transit system, I'm not getting paid my salary. It's actually my overtime salary. So Metro pays police officers or sheriff's department their overtime salary, which obviously it's a lot more. So essentially, we're paying overtime for all these agencies, these policing agencies. Another breakdown is 548,000 a day on surveilling. Many members, even on our last meeting, where folks share their personal experiences, some folks shared experiences of being harassed by police. There's different stats that we can share some other time around Black and brown folks being arrested, over ticketed, etc. Yeah. Another thing to note, that we won't get too into, but just because it's also part of the campaign, really important to note, is that a lot of the altercations that happen between bus drivers and riders is around fare, right? But because, like I shared earlier, that we already pay for the system, we are calling for a fareless transit system, right? It's not free because we're paying for it through our taxes already, right? Through our sales taxes. And just like we pay through our taxes for the road we drive in, but don't pay extra to drive. Similarly, we're calling for our system countywide to be fareless. Another thing to note is that Metro spends almost as much enforcing fares as much as they collect. So they don't make a big profit. And when we talk about enforcing, we're talking about policing, but we're also talking about things like the tap system, etc. So eliminating fares, making sure that the system is a fairless transit system, is also part of our vision to safety, right? Because it's a point of protection, and it's also one of the reasons why we get policed so much, or we're ticketed, harassed for tickets to see if you have like the fares, etc. Most of these policing agencies spend time doing proactive type of policing, which means that when you're walking in transit and you see them like by the turnstiles, just kind of checking on you, asking to show your pass and stuff like that. So them coming to you instead of them being called by someone for an emergency is what they spend most of their time doing. Okay, so that was super quick on policing contracts. Obviously, there's a lot there and a lot to talk about, and I know we'll have more opportunities to dive deep into that, but we really want to get into alternatives. Representing, I don't know why I stopped. We want to get into alternatives. One thing to note is that we all care about our communities. We just shared our favorite things about our communities, and I know for me and for most of you, you know, it's not just us in our community, but it's multi-generational. Our children, or you know, our friends, cousins, parents, grandparents, etc., are part of our community. So it's really important for most of us, all of us, I think, that we have safe communities. So when we are talking about removing police from transit, it's not because we do not care about safety, but actually the opposite. We care about safety deeply, and we want to make sure that we have actual safety in our system and not just perceived safety, like, oh, we see a cop there, so it must be safe, but actual safety. And also, we recognize that police are not safe for everyone, right? So that's why today we really want to get into alternatives. And I will.
Thank you. I think we can talk a little bit about how we can imagine a station, how it would make us feel safe, make us feel welcome, um, and some of the things that you might see and how this will make you feel comfortable, again, safe and or welcome. I know for myself, I get triggered when I see cops. Um, Also, have I would like to know how folks share some, or have folks share how some things that they might see um, as reimagining a station without an officer. That's gonna be, instead of Metro spending money on harassing folks, they should invest in our communities. And how can we see that? How can we reimagine this friendly space? Um,
I
so
can go. Um, I definitely want to see. I want to see my local street vendors supported, not just with the community, but from the city itself, for sure. Um, I wanted music. One thing I want that to be highlighted. Maybe local artists too as well. I definitely want to see that. Um, it's a list. It's a list. Um, I also want to see some way to support our unhoused community, and I don't. I want to um, kind of create not necessarily like a bridge, but I want people to. I want people to understand, like, you know, unhoused, the unhoused community is just a part of our community, as you know what I'm saying. So I definitely want I want maybe an educational system on for the community on unhoused on the unhoused community and how we can support as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all amazing. I never get enough of the street vendors, as they are my neighbors, my friends. We can support the local hustle, and have different options when we're out there traveling and commuting to our everyday either work, school, or exploring the city. Does anybody have any other ideas that they would like to share?
I have idea. I was like, it sounds like we kind of talking general when we speaking on safety, and there's like no real specific like threat or danger that I'm hearing. So like I would more be interested in hearing about the types of issues that take place on these buses that threaten someone's safety. In addition to that, I also want to know no, let's just start right there. Like I want to know, like, oh, I wanted to know the analytics. Like I want to find out, like, where are the areas that they're having frequent issues with, safety on the metro buses. Like, what is there a specific line that has a higher frequency of issues in regards to safety? Is there a way we can look at that? Because I don't want to take away the police if we're not considering like the immediate issues that people deal with from time to time or from day to day. So just I want to know what the analytics is like, what they looking like as far as incidents that may have happened on the metro, what lines are more frequent, and yeah, just about being able to if we're not going to use a police or sheriff deputies for that, then shoot, we need to focus on the areas that are trouble areas. And then the last thing would be to be able to look at the analytics, make sure that the trouble areas are being addressed, and not paying overtime. Like it's like we're paying double for policing when we got to pay overtime. Like to me that's absurd. Like that's crazy. Like that's the rate that we have to pay for safety on Metro is a time and a half or a double time to get safety on public transportation. So like that alone should be addressed if they're going to give any kickback about defunding the police on Metro lines. That's it.
Thank you, Andre. Elizabeth shared on the chat that she would like to see more colors, more plants and trees, artwork reflecting communities, maintenance and regard for area, signage in various languages, and more lighting. Yes, we need that to make us feel safe.
May I respond or comment about what Andre was saying?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I really like that you brought that up because sooner or later, we can say defund the police and replace with community liaisons all we want, but if we're presented with statistics, then it'll be harder to make a case for it. I will say definitely women, myself, my daughter, every woman I've ever known that has ridden the bus has been harassed one way or another. However, the police have never helped that situation, not once. And the only time that I haven't personally encountered police, I worked in San Pedro for several years, and the 950, the bus that goes down that way, actually has police get on the bus with their guns and ask every single person to show them their tap card so they can scan it into their expensive little machine to make sure that you paid. And if you didn't use a tap card, they definitely antagonize you and say you're gonna need to use a tap card. The buses aren't gonna accept cash anymore. How much did you pay? Yeah, I think it is important to get those analytics as well. But we also need to find a way to show that the police, supposedly the police are there to protect you from, being harassed or getting hurt. But I've never, not once, ever in all my life of taking the bus, have seen police help a situation on the bus. Not once. And then even recently, just last week, there was a man on the bus that just like kept following me and all over the bus. Like I kept moving and he kept following me and like sitting with me. I've had my daughter get blocked in by a man. Nobody on the bus says anything. And in my daughter's case, the bus driver was no help. In my case, I got up and I just stood next to the driver and I was like, this man is harassing me. He's making me feel really uncomfortable. He keeps looking at me really, really weird. It was obvious he had mental health issues. So it's really hard to be like, can you call the police? But, he called some kind of supervisor and the supervisor was going to get him off the bus at one of the stops. But the dude just wound up getting off before it happened anyway. So, I think it would require, like, for people to feel safer on the bus. Everybody on the bus has to look out for each other. I don't know how that's possible. It's not the bus driver's job to protect us either. So it's a really tough one. But I do feel like you made a really valid point, Andre.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nisha. We have someone with their hand raised, which is Casey. But before we go on to Casey, I wanted to also share, I used to work for Metro. I used to get to witness how officers would harass the young Black men, the young Latinos. They would just look for an excuse. They would literally handcuff them and search them without a cause to see if they could arrest them. If not, they would just let them go. If they didn't have, they didn't pay the fare, they would ticket them. When they carry tokens so that they can pay for folks, because they're given to them, but they choose and pick who they harass, who they criminalize on an everyday. And it's unfair because I also got to see how different white students would get privileged. They could go drunk, carry their beers into the train, and if they didn't pay, they would get paid. Their transit fare would get paid. It was so disgusting to see that every time I had to work out there in public. And this is why I'm so passionate about working with ACT LA because, and there was a couple of years ago, they also beat up a young guy here at Mariachi Plaza. I live right across Mariachi Plaza, and the young kid was skating on top on the street level. There's no danger there. That's a community space where we have usually before the pandemic, every Friday and Saturday, we would have a farmer's market and we would have DJs there and people would sing and dance. The entire community would come out. And our youth would always hang around the skaters. And I'm a mom. My kids like to be there too. My grandkid, who's 7 years old, learned how to skate with those young guys there until the police started harassing them, arresting them. My son got arrested for jaywalking with his bike because they asked him to leave.
Okay. All right, stop you, Ben. Thank you so much. Thank you all for your comments. We had a meeting just 2 weeks ago where we all shared our experiences, and we know that our work is rooted in our experiences. But I really want to get us through these alternatives, right? And this is, like I said, this is not the only conversation we're going to have. And Andre, I want to take a step back because I forgot to mention this, and I think this answers your question a little bit. Your question was a two-part question. One was around stats. As part of the PFAC that we brought up in the beginning, we've been asking for a lot more of the breakdowns of where things are happening, et cetera, et cetera.
You're kind of you're covering your mic. That's better now.
Can you guys hear me now?
Now, yes.
I don't know where my mic is, but I guess it was. Okay, so so we're asking for those stats because we also want to know more clarity around what work they are actually doing when we say private security, policing, etc. Like, what does their day-to-day look like? But there is two things I can share with you all, and I'll send it after this meeting as part of all of the materials. One is that when it comes to two things I can share with you. One is that when it comes to response times, which is the thing that gets highlighted the most, response times are faster with these contracts. There's a lot of evidence, there's stats that there's a map that I can show you all and I will send with our materials, that response times has not necessarily improved. So like you mentioned, Andre, we're paying overtime to police the system for work that they already are doing, right? Like it's part of Los Angeles, right? Like if there's an emergency, the systems we call right now is police. And the response time has not gotten faster. So that's one thing I can share, and I will share that information. There's another report that I could share with you all that was done by Pueblo, I think, and it's around how women travel, and it really covers sexual harassment and women's experiences on transit, and not only sexual harassment, but also the way women travel, what type of trips they take, what type of things they have. So the built environment around carrying a baby stroller, for example, having your children and the difficulty around that. And one thing about one thing about that study in particular is that Metro keeps on citing it as a reason to keep policing, but the folks who were part of the study have in the agenda that if you break it down by race, women of color do not feel more safe with police, right? So I think it's really important that we look at who is calling for police and who is not, even when they're both experiencing some situations. How the compañera shared about her experiences and what has made her feel safe and what has not. So it's a lot. So it will be, we will share that information too. We could talk about it more in the following meeting. I will say that in our society, how we spoke about, I think in the first meeting, everything has turned into police. So if there's a mental health crisis, you call police. If something got stolen, you call police. If your car broke down, you call police. I don't know. Call police for everything. So we are seeing safety as a holistic way of approach. We want to approach safety as a whole thing. So that's why we have these like 6 pillars, right? And Fanny was talking about rider-friendly active spaces. So what type of programming do you want to see? What type of things do you want to see that make you feel comfortable in a place? Because when we think about safety, we want to feel welcome, comfortable, and we want to actually be safe. So I hope that helps with at least starting to answer the question, or at least starting to build a foundation for this conversation that we'll continue to have. I'm going to move forward so we can get to all the alternatives, and we are calling for all 6 of them because I think they all need to work together in order for us to really have a safe transit system. So this is what we spoke about right now. Just rider-friendly spaces and some stuff you might want to see. And folks mentioned active spaces, right? Like having street vendors, having trees and stuff, and built environment, and how that makes you feel safe. But also we know that the more eyes on a station, the safer a place is going to be. So that's also part of it. Talked about programming, etc. And feel free to have like side conversations on the chat while I get through this. So yeah, so seating, stops, plants, street vendors, books, birds, whatever we imagine, right? Something that makes us feel good. The second thing is stewardship, the second pillar, and that one is more on actually replacing bodies, so policing bodies. So this one's more, it's one of the first ones that we're starting with. It's the one that Metro has approved some funding for transit ambassadors, right? And this is the one, it's like a team, station attendants, trust agents, and transit ambassadors. And these folks would be trained in with different expertise to take care of a lot of a majority of array of issues. So for example, sexual harassment, these folks would be able to intervene. They would be trained for de-escalation. If something is coming up, they would be trained to work with outreach workers, to provide services to folks who are having maybe like a mental health episode on the station. They also would be trained to do things, and again, these are 3 folks. They also would be trained to do things like help you figure out your trip. So for example, wayfinding, to not be lost at a station, not be lost on a bus stop. So we imagine a team of folks that work for Metro, and we'll get into the importance of them being actually working for Metro and them being good jobs. So we imagine a team of folks who would be stewards of the stations, right, of our transit system, and would be there to welcome us, keep us safe, and support us while we navigate and take space of our transit system, which belongs to us. Is there any quick question or comment on that? Or you could drop it on your chat. Maybe I could get to it there.
Casey has his hand raised.
Casey?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Again, you changed the vein of the conversation. What I had to do was kind of going back to where we were, and I want you to be able to move forward where you are. And so I'll just say that I do like the aspect of replacing police with a more security-oriented vision. Could be unarmed, could be a mix of armed and unarmed. I just, the police are just not our friends, and it's a shame to be able to say that because my dad was a police officer, and I always had the greatest respect for policemen until I came to Los Angeles and found out and really saw how these guys work. And so I understand the issues, and I'm in complete agreement with the need for change, but still to have that presence there that creates a feeling of safety and security and organizing emergency response and things of that nature.
Thank you so much, Casey. That was a great comment. All your comments are amazing and great. We could talk about this all day long. Thank you. I'm gonna pass it next. Let's see.
Sorry, we couldn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. This is a picture just of a mock-up of transit ambassadors that we did at a station. And we supported folks who came to the station and like filling up their tap card and navigating the system as a way to show what it would look like, obviously pre-COVID. I will pass it to, I think, Fanny.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing us back. I think another example would be having a space where we can do yoga. As you can see me there practicing yoga, or having something like the Summer Night Lights program, which was started by our former mayor, Villaraigosa, back in 2008, I believe. I think it's important for us to have space for community to be able to share community with community. I think at Mariachi Plaza, it's an example of how community engages through having a farmer's market right on Mariachi Plaza, where we get to dance and sing and enjoy food from our local street vendors. and also support the local street vendors that sell clothing, jewelry, shoes. I think as a community, we know how to take care of each other. It's important for Metro to understand that there's no need to spend so much money in policing and criminalizing people of color when they can invest in our communities and we can take care of each other. So I always say divest to invest. And this is a perfect example. And I'll pass it on to Severa.
Oh wait, I'll play this video.
Thank you.
Just like short. Can you all see the YouTube? Okay.
We see it, but we can't hear it.
You try pressing share screen and the box in the bottom left that says share audio.
Okay. Wait, what did you tell me, Alfonso?
If you hit in Zoom, if you hit share screen, and then in the dialog box that opens up, the bottom left, there's a button that says share audio. Make sure that's checked.
Can you hear it now?
Back in full swing at 32 of LA
Yes.
parks. Program keeps
It went out.
We can't hear it. Thank you. Apologies.
Okay, so you cannot hear it. I'm just gonna tell you the gist of it. Sorry about that, but like Fanny said, it's a program that was started at Boyle Heights Parks, and the idea is that if there's actual programming happening in times or areas that there would be crimes, it would reduce crimes because the community is taking over the space, right? And it's like it covers things like more eyes on a place, less crime, but not only that, it has like community experts, which is someone uplifted that in the chat. The how do you call it, importance of having community experts taking over part of the community. So for example, I can really imagine on Wilshire and Vermont, like in K-Town, having Korean drummers, stuff like that, that maybe, you know, folks partner with Kiwa, for example, to have culturally relevant programming and expertise that understands the community and knows it. So that was the gist of it.
Casey has a really good one, educating our community on how community can work together towards safety. Things as simple as the redeveloping neighborhood watch groups are an easy example. But I also want to share that also educating bus drivers, educating them about the community that they're serving, because the community is the one that's creating them their job, and they have to engage with the community, you know. Thank you.
Sabira.
Thank you, Fanny. Thank you. Yeah, so to piggyback off of that, as well as we were talking about like a trust committee, I wanted to get into some of those support services. In particular, I mean, from a personal standpoint, actually, we could start with that. So, 1% of contacts that receive housing, PATH teams versus police agents. So 27% of PATH teams received housing, and 28% of contacts referred to services were police agencies versus the 48% of PATH teams that were contacted for services from September 2019 to November 2019. To segue off of that, like, so just to give it some personal background, my dad, he's worked in psych in the medical field for 20 years. And in particular, he's worked in the emergency department, and he's an expert on conflict resolution and restraint for many of those folks who have, psychological issues. And one thing he always noticed was how, a lot of members from the community will go in and they'll be held within the hospital for like 5 days, and they'll go right back out. There's no actual, rehabilitation for folks. And, he thought too, like, what if, you had, because, from being in and out of the hospital consistently, you start to build trust with your nurses and things like that. You start to build trust with just, your medical staff, to where, my dad would walk the streets and he'd see, maybe 5-6 of his patients. And, it would, he would know how to talk with them. He would know how to calm them down, those kinds of things. And I feel like if, maybe, we trained, in particular, Metro staff on how to handle these types of conflicts, it would be a lot easier. For example, my dad actually is now, ironically, my dad teaches different hospitals on how to handle mental health patients. So if we had those kinds of things on board, for the community, that could really impact the community, especially just creating that sense of trust, and really creating that trust team that knows what they're doing, based off of experts that are experts within their own individual field. But yeah, also I wanted to ask, in different communities, there are different needs. So, what are some educational campaigns that would be, beneficial to your community? And I'll leave that open for you all. Thank you.
Yeah, I just mentioned in the chat, in Willowbrook, there's a lot of investments being made in health services, mental health services, to be specific. And so we always see, folks looking for services in our community and not really, know what to do after they receive their services. And most of them need to travel within Los Angeles, with the Rosa Parks station being there. And I don't know how many people I've helped personally just go from one side of the street to the other to help find their way to get from one place to the other. I have mentioned this to the, community services at MLK, and that's something that we have talked about. But again, it seems like that's not on their radar to do. But I think that in tandem with the other ambassador programs on the ground could really fortify what that looks like. And I mean, get as many people on this as possible. You know what I mean? I know that, as Andre had mentioned earlier,
the Willowbrook station is somewhat unique to other areas. It's the fourth busiest in the state. A lot of people that are not residents of Willowbrook utilize that station as it connects to the Green and other places. So, it would look different in Willowbrook, but I would like to go back to, our, I guess you would call it a partnership with Metro on a certain few programs. And they are looking to activate some of their stations with arts and culture events over time. And I think the more that community pushes them towards activating these spaces with arts and culture, and it's easier to, like I said, create a sense of place there that I think folks can respect. You can get buy-in from. These now become places of safety versus places of, folks feeling unsafe because of the activities.
Thank you, Reginald. Thank you. I agree.
I have one. I think for public education, well, it needs to be in language, but I think one in Koreatown's my community. So I think one that would be really great, and I don't know how it would happen, how you would do it, but Koreatown is one of the most diverse communities that we have in Los Angeles, and it'd be cool to have culturally diverse information around the different communities that live there. I'm thinking for example, when the riots happen and stuff, we've had racial tensions before when unhoused folks, when there was a shelter that was going to open, and recently with Asian hate crimes, there's been a lot of racial tension in the past. So it'd be cool to have more of highlighting all the different communities that live there.
Thank you, Scarlett. Anyone else?
I think if Metro led some sort of bystander training to sort of help sort of foster that stewardship model, would be really awesome. There was an article in the LA Times that I came across that highlighted this group called ihollaback.org, and they produced this thing called the 5 Ds of bystander intervention, and essentially to kind of distract from whatever kind of focus on any kind of event or incident that might be happening at the time is one of their solutions. So it was a broader approach to fostering stewardship. If Metro could do that, would be nice.
Definitely. Thank you, Alfonso.
Yeah, wouldn't it be amazing if they can create support services for people that are impacted, because of their homelessness and they have mental issues. If they created a program that educates and engages with communities, and it's also as well creating paying jobs. All that would be amazing. We would have less folks incarcerated, more folks getting services that they need, as opposed to funding unnecessary funding for police to continue criminalizing people of color.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Also, to segue, thank you, Fanny, for bringing that up. Yeah, we definitely, they definitely need to create well-paying jobs, in particular union jobs. As a member of a union myself, I definitely appreciate it. And the benefits and the amount of support that you do get as a union worker is huge. So the potential for job creation is there. So I want to relate to the slide here. So the scope of safety on Metro most certainly extends to those who operate it. The above recommendations necessitate well-paying jobs and would generate employment. So maintenance and operation The prioritization of well-kept stations are also require regular maintenance work and cleaning and the general upkeep. Sustaining high-quality transit service expands buses and rail operator jobs opportunities. Designing and planning. Architects, contractors, and construction workers are trained to create well-designed transit stations, while artists and graphic designers and musicians and bakers and other food cooks elevate the sensory experience of Metro and provide a sense of place. So new wayfinding signs also require designers and community expertise, as do public education campaigns. Local businesses, local and micro business owners would see an increase in patronage given their welcome presence at shops and stations and access to public, both with easier transit and with wayfinding to local establishments. Inviting locations for street vendors, providing them with secure and regular spaces to do business. And also, last thing I also wanted to add, exactly what Scarlett said, the Black Worker Center campaign is working to get 1,000 jobs to Black workers, and Metro could hop on to this. They could easily do that. So that's there. That resource is there for them. Lastly, I guess I want to leave it up to the floor if you guys have any questions, any more comments. The floor is yours. Thank you.
I just wanted to share one more resource. Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I just wanted to share one more resource that I recently came across that was a good listing of all the social services providers in Los Angeles that we can call instead of police. So I just dropped it in the link. I dropped the link in the chat.
Thank you. If we have time for questions. If not, we can go to the last slide.
We do have time. We have time for questions.
Awesome. Does anybody have questions, comments?
I just have one more resource. I don't know if anyone knows this, but in the city of Long Beach, one sec, sorry, I just got cut off on here. So the city of Long Beach has a cannabis, I want to say job program where, many dispensaries that are opening up and have opened up in the city of Long Beach have to hire their local community. So I'm gonna drop that in the chat as well. It's basically a cannabis job fair program, but in particular, they have to hire folks from the community who have had cannabis offenses in the past and things like that. This is just kind of a way back into the industry, and this is kind of their way of doing that and kind of
doing reparation.
Doing reparations. Yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah, I was trying to say reparations without trying to say reparations. But this is basically reparations. So yeah, if y'all want to hop on that. Also, my union in particular, if anyone does have a cannabis offense that they would like to have expunged, the UFCW hosts consistently a cannabis expungement program clinic, and I'm gonna drop some of those in the chat.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. However, I believe that for them to do reparations, they would need to release folks from jail. Truly, because the drug and war started.
That part. That part.
Yeah.
This is crumbs really from what they're trying to do, like in comparison to, what they should be doing, to be honest with you.
Cool.
Awesome.
Any other questions, comments? Fanny, you want me to show the last slide?
For sure, please. So we're like near our end. So just if I can have someone read from the slide. I can start. Sanctuary as a space to dance, for sure. Sanctuary as a space to speak. Sanctuary as a space to relax. Sanctuary as a space to see. Sanctuary as a space to listen. Sanctuary as space to think. Sanctuary as a space to eat. Sanctuary as a space to catch your breath. Sanctuary as a space to learn. Sanctuary as a space to breathe again. Sanctuary as a space to reflect.
That part.
Sanctuary as a space to get warm. Sanctuary as a space to connect. Sanctuary as a space to enjoy. Sanctuary as a space to be. I gotta say that one again. Sanctuary as a space to be. Sanctuary as a space to meditate. Sanctuary as a space to laugh. Sanctuary as a space to cool down. This is all empowering. Like, can we just be? I just want to say thank you again. Thank you for coming. And next month we will be discussing the action steps towards making some of these alternatives into reality. And I hope to see everyone, because this is getting real. We're gonna win this campaign. We gotta make sure that the Fairless Transit becomes Fairless, not just for a pilot program, but for the rest of the next 7 generations to come. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sabira.
Thank you.
Sharing space with me. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye, thank you.
I would also add into the sanctuary.
Go for it. Can hear you.
We're hearing you. We're listening to you, Casey.
I'm sorry, I must keep losing this.
You better
But I
stay
would
fast,
have to add I would say a place to pray as well.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
Yes.
Definitely. All right, guys. Everybody have a good night.
Good night. See you on
God bless you. Good meeting.
You.
Night.
Thank you.